Hello, SOCI 302. We're going to begin our lecture on chapter 3. As you can hear, my voice is a little scratchy. I've had some illness in the past week, but I did want to put in this lecture for you. So I am going to open up the share screen. So just hold on a minute. Let's see. Get this share screen going. All right, we've been able to share the screen. This chapter has a number of videos for you to watch, and you need to watch all of them because your assignment is going to be that you're going to choose 5 of these videos and link them to the concepts that are in the textbook. So as I go through the textbook, and each slide, I'm going to tell you what page the slide begins on. So our next controversy, our next issue related to aging is, do intelligence and creativity decline with age? And there's a lot of different theories related to decline in intelligence and decline in creativity. A lot of these theories have been disproved because we do know we have many people who are aged, who are very active, and actually older age is being redefined, as we've seen already. So when we look at slide 1, the question of age and intellectual ability. So what is intelligence? What is the IQ? Okay. Albert Einstein in the 30s and 40s had this statement on page 101. A person who has not made his great contribution to science before the age of 30 will never do so. Do you think Einstein was right? I don't think so. Because when we think of Stephen Hawking, when we think of Elon Musk, when we think of all these great inventors, when we think of Michelangelo, when we think of Grandma Moses, when we think of all of these people who have been very creative and produce, when we think of Ford, when we think of Edison, these are people who had great inventions post 30s. So the old myth of declining intelligence and creativity, I think is going to have to go to the wayside. I would like you also to think about some fears people may have. People have fears in themselves that as they age, they will not perhaps be seen as intelligent or capable, have greater capacity. And we know that this is called ageism. We have a new definition of a discrimination called ageism. So stereotypes and assumptions about older people are they won't be able to produce, they're not as fast, they don't understand, they're judgmental, on and on and on. And so I'd like you to watch 2 videos now. They're a little on the funny side. One of them is about a grandma in Italy being taught to use Google. And the other one is Webcam 101. So these are some stereotypes. As we talk about stereotypes, watch Webcam 101 about grandma and grandpa who are trying to learn to use the camera on their new computer they have. And I think some comments that are at the end are going to be a little surprising because one of the other myths is that sexuality decreases and interest in sexuality decreases as people age. So watch Grandma Grandpa on Webcam 101. So what do you think? Goo. So lots of fun things. We can stereotype people. And when we think of birthday cards, when we think of how people are represented in situation comedies or on television, in movies, we can see there's a lot of stereotyping that takes place. So on page, so when we look on page 102, we see some definitions for fluid intelligence, which is intelligence. You can highlight the whole first sentence under elements of cognitive function, page 102, because this is a testable term, as well as crystallized intelligence. So fluid intelligence applied to new tasks or the ability to come up with novel or creative solutions to unforeseen problems. Fluid intelligence, in other words, you're able to understand a problem, be creative about problem resolution. We'll see later that with age, it's attributed with wisdom. And so the issue to be able to learn a new task, that's where fluid intelligence becomes a little compromised in older ages because it's a little harder to retain the knowledge. Crystallized intelligence, testable, first sentence, paragraph 2, is the accumulated past experiences and the effects of socialization. So crystallized intelligence may signify the acquisition of practical expertise in everyday life. In other words, they have wisdom, to do this and not that. Just experience in life as you have aged should have learned something else, should have taught you something else. Socrates, going back to philosophers such as Socrates, have argued that wisdom lies in a balance of attitude toward what we think we know and knowing what we do not know, at the same time refusing to be paralyzed by doubt. In other words, if I don't know, I may know someone who does, or I'll find out. So the ability to transcend bias or personal needs that may distort one's perception of a given situation. I will find out. I will find out. Wisdom doesn't just sit there and make excuses. Wisdom says, let's go into this, okay? Wisdom then involves more than cognitive development alone. It requires a degree of detachment and freedom from being self-centered, making excuses about things, that has been described as ego transcendence. So the wisdom paradox, this is on the bottom of page 102, highlight that, it's testable, comes from the capacity of pattern recognition. In other words, I've been here before, I've seen this situation, let me give you a little advice. Even though the characters in the situation have changed and the time has changed, the situation is the same. So an active mind may also provide a defense against habituation and instead lead to the development of wisdom. So instead of becoming the couch potato, the rocker on the front porch, wisdom says, be active, stay active, get involved, find out. So there is a trade-off between creativity and wisdom. The top of page 103, highlight the first sentence. Some psychologists have wondered whether there is a trade-off between creativity and wisdom, with one declining while the other increases with advancing age. So I'm gaining more wisdom, but maybe my creative side of my brain isn't quite functioning like it used to. Wise people, we might say, have a high tolerance from ambiguity because they appreciate how difficult it is to make a reliable judgment. So some people prefer not to be judgmental in the old age. And you'll hear people saying, well, everybody's got to find out for themselves, or if I was younger, I would go back and do this or that. So we also see the issue about creativity decline. In American society, there's a lot of television watching, and the television comes on at 7 in the morning, doesn't go off till 10 o'clock at night. And we know, and also scrolling through on this disengages creative processes in the brain. Also, cognition reduces the more you play on your phone, very short burst of information coming in, also has cognitive issues with the brain. In other words, being able to interact with people for long periods of time becomes more difficult. Reading, your attention span reduces because you're used to those quick little bursts of information. We see that in Eastern countries where there's not a lot of television watching. In India, China, Japan, old age is viewed as an appropriate time for spiritual exploration and artistic development. So late life disengagement has to do with no longer working, but it's a wonderful opportunity for your personal growth and creativity. So in particular, in Hindu doctrine, this is the last sentence in paragraph 3, you can highlight that. In Hindu doctrine of life stages, the later life is a period that culminates in spiritual insight and wisdom, and this is called the forest dweller, where people leave house and home and they go out and they might live more of a isolationist in environment, and they seek mantra, meditation, they seek deeper insights, they go on pilgrimages with the sadhus and the yogis, and they seek to create enlightenment for themselves. We also see that there is a change or a deepening in creative style. So if you were a little bit creative in your 30s, when you have a reduction of work time, you may have even more creative time. And so these sources of creativity and productivity open up. So we also see here that the Dutch painter Rembrandt, his style changed and it deepened as he grew older. Monet continued to paint his famous water lilies even when he was confined to his home in the 70s. Matisse also was forced to give up painting, but he chose to go into watercolor, which is just an easier flowing paint. And it is as if older artists are able to discard mere technical achievements in favor of beautiful elemental qualities of art. So there are many late style poets such as Goethe and Yeats and Keats. And so there are many sources of late life creativity. And so we see in many nursing homes, we see different types of art products being presented so people can participate in creative expression. I'd like you to watch now. Open up the Grandma Moses links and watch Grandma Moses because this is at the bottom of page 103. Okay, so there's the New York Times obituary for Grandma Moses, and it absolutely explains that until she was in her later life, she didn't even begin to paint, and now we know that she is this prolific painter. Look at her paintings. There's the article link there. Many attain the peak of their careers much later in life than others do, and their creative potential begins there. What did you think of some of those paintings by Grandma Moses? Some people find them a little bit what they call simple, or like elementary school children would paint, but they're just gorgeous paintings, and she was able to achieve notoriety. When we look at the classic aging pattern, in the past, so we're going to talk a lot now about studies from the past. We're going to go in talking about studies from the past. In particular, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale has to do with, and this is a testable term, is the most influential measure of global or general intelligence in use. So global doesn't mean worldwide. It means what the person is able to achieve in sciences, English, maths, um, the different geographies. Different global means complete educational learning. Okay. So when we looking at gauging or assessing intelligence, is it just on the ability to answer those questions that you're being asked? Or is it the ability to reconstruct a problem and provide a solution for it, or to give positive advice? So the classic aging pattern, that's on page 105, you see that by age 25, people are at their peak. This is what the classic aging pattern is. We have crystallized intelligence, which is language and social intelligence. And then we have fluid mechanics. And it is proposed that these problem solving, memory, being able to recognize symbols and figures, being able to answer questions quickly, learn something new, fluid intelligence, that diminishes with age. So what we're looking at is the classic aging pattern. But we're not quite sure if IQ tests really do measure IQ. In tests on the bottom of page 104, complex relationships can be found between aging and intelligence. In a test of basic memory skills of young and older adults, the average 70-year-old would take 3 or 4 times longer than a 20-year-old to identify a mental picture linking a word and a location, and will tend to make more mistakes. Older people do well on tests for language skills, as well as knowledge about how to handle life's ups and downs. So this leaves research with a very difficult hypothetical dilemma. How do we assess intelligence in old age? So on page 6, the second paragraph that begins with Paul Bates, which is the psychological test here. He developed a psychological exam to test wisdom, and highlight the first sentence in the third paragraph. Bates went on to define wisdom as an expert knowledge system derived from experience and capable of dealing with very pragmatic problems. And so, how do we differentiate wisdom from intelligence? And if the intelligence test is timed, does brevity equate to brevity in answering a question relate to intelligence, or does it just relate to the speed in which you read and process? Because intelligence is not marked by speed of answer. It's marked by if the answer is correct or not. So we're not going to look at anything on page 108. We're going to look at page 109 now, okay? So we see there's a lot of difficulty in conducting these studies on creativity. And so when we look at studies of age and cognitive function, we also have to realize up until the boomer generation that was born in 48, and so 48 to 64, this boomer generation now are the old age participants in the newer research. Prior to 1948, many people didn't live past 60. A very rare number of people live past 60 due to the lack of good nutrition, harsh work environments, as well as poor medical attention and technology related to medical. And so many people did not make it. Now, the average age people are living to in very good health is 80. Many people will live past 80 into their 90s fully functioning. I know several people who have made it to 95 fully functioning, 105 fully functioning. So let's keep going. Okay, so there are some correlates, things that go together with cognitive stability. And so the evidence thus shows first sentence on page 109 in the paragraph. The evidence thus shows that age does not necessarily mean loss of cognitive function. Nevertheless, performance on intelligence tests does decline, especially if it's a timed intelligence test. So the ability to answer speedily and advancing age will have negative effects on performance, i.e., on the intelligence test. But it doesn't mean that they're getting the answers wrong. It just takes a longer amount of time to process. Aging is, in fact, accompanied by a clear loss in cognitive reserve capacity. And so what is cognitive reserve capacity? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting this. So here, slide 9, cognitive reserve capacity. And here's the definition. You need to highlight this. The degree of unused potential for learning that exists at any given time. So how much is your brain able to process in this new task? Studies of reaction time in training show that the speed of information processing definitely declines with age. So remember the 101 video we watched? That 101 video? That was funny. So that 101 video absolutely demonstrated how hard it was even just to hit the right button to know what we're going to do. And this is why people that are aging have lists and lists and lists and lists of things in the processes of how to perform a function. So write things down if you're going to try and show older people what to do. Research also suggests that there's a positive relationship between engagement in leisure activities starting in midlife and later life cognitive function. So enjoying life in your mid-30s, 40s, and 50s, enjoying some downtime, okay, enjoying time in leisure activities, not being quite so pressured, will increase your cognitive function as you move forward. So here on page 110, we see that there are many other explanations other than chronic age for this classic aging pattern. One of them is it could be ill health. People have had poor health outcomes. They've had to take medicine. Maybe they've suffered a traumatic event in their life, and their psychological functioning has been affected. And so we also see differences in IQ test performances depending on even modest declines in health issues. Some heart medications, psychiatric medications affect brain function. Poor health and disability also tend to cause exit from paid work and therefore probably weaken your learning opportunities. You're not active. Activity is what we need to remember, keeps our cognitive functioning. Some note then that both biological changes such as health status and social changes such as retirement may be responsible for changing cognitive abilities. So if you're not engaged at work and you're sitting home watching TV and you don't go out and do other activities or develop a hobby or socialize, then the brain functioning reduces and it runs at minimal capacity. The ability to adapt also, see right here, this is the first sentence in the second paragraph on page 110. The ability to adapt, your reflective flexibility, we call that resilience, your internal makeup of how do you bounce back. In psychology, we call this the bounce back. Are you able to bounce back from some of life's negative events? Some psychologists studying personality and basic personality dispositions include traits such as being neurotic, extroverted, open to experience and conscientiousness as personality traits that could affect cognitive functioning. These dispositions predict how people will adapt to changing life circumstances. Also, Erickson, in his life stage model, called this time of life, late stage, as either being disgruntled with life or being enthusiastic and satisfied with life. And so think of your grandparents or maybe your aging parents. Are they disgruntled, complaining about everything? Are they happy and they are accepting of where they are in life and they're content with what they've been able to accomplish and looking forward to doing more in their life? Surprisingly, according to this model, basic personality and temperament change little after the age of 30. So when your temperament, are you outgoing, extroverted, introverted? Are you worrisome or are you carefree? Longitudinal studies show that personality is stable throughout adulthood, even in response to health problems, economic setbacks, and bereavement. So we might want to ask a few questions how personality is being defined and measured. So I want to insert here as a marriage and family therapist. If you think you're going to change somebody, you're not. Only that person can change themselves. And more than likely, what you have in front of you is what you're going to have down the road 7, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. So if you can't live with that personality trait, that disposition or temperament, get out. Because you're not going to change them and you're going to make that person miserable with trying to change them, and yourself, you're going to become a hateful, vindictive person who requires someone to change. Come on, to suit your requirements. It's best for you to go find somebody that suits those ahead of time. If you don't like that little something or something or something, and you've talked to them about it and they're not willing to change that, bye. Okay? Make yourself happy and somebody else even more happier. Let's keep going. By the way, I'm the butterfly. I'm the social butterfly, very extroverted, don't plan anything. I like extemporaneous experiences. Let's just go down the road and see what happens. How many of you could stand living with someone like that? Yes, we'll get a hotel room. We'll call 2 hours before we get down the road. We'll find out where we're at, see what's, come on. Temperament that is not changing. For instance, retirement may boost the cognitive performance of people who retire from routine or boring jobs. So you do the same thing every day. It's routine, routine, routine. So retiring may boost your cognitive performance because now you can become more creative. But it also might accelerate a decline for those who have held complex jobs. The multitasker now has nothing to do but put the laundry on, figure out what's for supper, maybe go take a walk, feed the dog, watch TV. Retirement. Good for some, not for others. Middle-aged people with flexible attitudes are less likely as they grow older to experience a decline in physiological competence than are those who could be described as cognitively rigid. Do you have someone that has to have everything planned? Go to Disney World and every 30 minutes we're going to be here, we're going to be there, we're going to be there. Right? cognitively rigid. Everything has to have a place, everything in its place. These people don't fare well in life as life changes begin to happen and routines are now no longer there. Our husband comes home and he retires, and you want to kill him in week 2. Don't mess up that. Don't put that there. Wash that glass. So, psychological characteristics, traits, temperaments, attitudes, resilience, bounce back, all of these things lead to cognitive stability and your ability to remain in control of your life as you age going forward. So this is slide 11. So think about brain games, the neuroplasticity of the brain, and as we move forward, the neuroplasticity in neuroscience. I'd like you to look up brain games, Google it, and play a few of those. There are specific, it's been 10, 15 years now that there are games on your computer that you can play that increase your cognitive functioning and keep it stable where you don't lose. One of them is Sudoku. I love to do Sudoku. So look up brain games. And the last of our slides, here we are on page 11, 111, 112. Bottom 2 sentences on page 111 under creativity and aging population. It was during the 20th century that we first saw signs in people gaining in longevity on a massive scale. The average person was living to 65 by the mid-60s. Why? Because of the advance in technology, x-rays, cancer treatment, also heart treatment for heart diagnosis. In the 60s, medicine's increasing in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So we are now, as I said earlier, our baby boomers are giving us the best, newest data on aging. Only in recent decades have substantial numbers of people experienced old age in relatively good health with high levels of education. And so looking back on creativity and wisdom, we're going to get new data because many people are not stopping. I don't ever intend to retire. They're going to wheel me out of Nicholls State University as long as I make a little bit of sense. I can teach into my old age. We had Dr. Bornage, who is here, a history teacher, 86 years old, still teaching. He was the most current individual I knew on any current events. He kept himself very much engaged in politics and the social arenas of life. And he was always knocking on our doors with little newspaper clips, and he just recently passed away. And so at the age of 90 plus, he and his wife, prior to that, he led tours all over Europe for the history department. He and his wife, Paula. So kudos, Dr. Bornage and Mrs. Bornage. You left a great legacy behind. We also see that in late life, it improves our opportunities to practice arts. Many people begin to paint, or they begin to dance, or they begin to do anything else they like hobby-wise. We see that Michelangelo was at the age of 71, was named the chief architect of St. Peter's in Rome. Titian painted his greatest works in the 80s. Picasso produced drawings and paintings into the 90s. Martha Graham continued choreography into her 80s. Jessica Tandy won an Oscar in her 80s. So, and we also see Georgia O'Keeffe, who continued to paint late into life. With improved opportunities to practice the arts and pursue lifelong learning, today's elders could take up the challenge of creativity and wisdom in the later years in ways unimaginable today. So no reading, just watching assignments now. Watch the rest of the videos and complete the assignment that is requiring you to cite 5 of the videos and discuss them. So you choose the 5. In particular, I like the one about the Get Happy, and it is a recreation of Will Ferrell's or Pharrell Williams's um, happy video that I love. So you can see already my disposition is very happy-go-lucky, and I intend to live into my 90s. I still want to go hike in Switzerland. I still have not seen the Grand Canyon. I love to go into caves, so I want to go look at the Carlsbad Cavern caves. I want to go see the Sistine Chapel. I want to go to Sweden in the summer and look at the fjords. I want to go touch Stonehenge stones. I want to stand at the in the Greek Colosseum, not Colosseum, but the amphitheater where Paul, the Apostle Paul, preached. I think I would like to see the Nile and the Sphinx. And so I'm not giving up my job because I need the money to go do the things I want to do in my 70s and 80s. And if I can't walk, I'll get me a little scooter that'll take me everywhere. What's your intentions in life? What's your intentions? Or maybe I'll go live on a cruise ship and see all the ports of call around the world. What is your grandma and grandpa doing? What are your mom and dad doing? What are you going to do? See you for chapter 4.